Hello, my name is Allison Tiemann,
Hello, I'm... Fuck it, Mike Stevenson. My first name is actually Fuck it.
and I just thought I would start a new series of standout letters to the Badger.
And I quite liked the sound of that, so I'm tagging along. I appreciate considered letters, and I enjoy reading them. It's good to know there's more to life than the shit we see in YouTube comments. So yeah, if you feel as though the subject we're talking about is already covered sufficiently and done and dusted and solved, and you're offended that we somehow still find it more urgent than the subject of Middle Eastern hymens, as the citizens of the West that we are, I'm afraid you're just going to have to grit your teeth and be a bit less of a pro-baby torturing fuckhead for the duration of the show, alright? Of course, I don't know who I'm talking to. You all rage quit because we offended you with our integrity agenda, didn't you? These dislikes must be coming from a whole new group of people who come here just to complain. Anyway, this is going to be a positive video where we don't shit on people. We just advocate for men's issues. And that won't piss anyone off, will it? Alright, let's get on.
Today's offering is Further Thoughts, inspired by Rant Zerker 21, How to Raise a Slave, by Jay-Z.
No relation. I don't know, maybe it's actually Jay-Z. Maybe this is the first of 99 of these.
Hello again, Badgers. It's Jay here again. I hope it would be all right with you if I ask you if you could continue to refer to me by that pseudonym. Yep. On the Rant Zerker 15, Men Should Just Shut Up episode, I think perhaps you guys gave me more credit than I deserve. Karen was mentioning that it's always nice to have somebody who's of the having a vagina and all that. Her exact words, not mine. Although I never actually did specify my exact gender identity in the previous missive, I guess you just assumed that due to my name. Just to set the record straight, I am in fact a trans woman. Kind of like Theron, as well as a libertarian, kind of like Theron, so I guess there might be some kind of similarity there. So technically, I don't actually enjoy the privilege of having a vagina.
Don't worry, not many people do. Most of them just complain about it.
As of right now, anyway. But yeah, I think Karen has actually mentioned in the past that there have been quite a few trans folks who were involved in the men's rights movement, so I guess I'm in good company. Well, I could maybe make a bit different is that what I guess could maybe make me a bit different is that I do actually identify as gender fluid rather than just all the time female. You may already know what gender fluid means, but just in case anyone doesn't, the I guess official definition is, quote, a gender identity which refers to a gender which varies over time. A gender fluid person may at any time identify as male, female, neutral, or any other non-binary identity or some combination thereof. Their gender identity can vary at random or in response to different circumstances. Gender fluid people may also identify as multigender, non-binary, and or transgender. Yes, I know that sounds extremely social justice-y, but it is what it is.
Yeah, alright. If boys will be boys, I suppose gender fluid is what it is. Either everyone gets a tautology or no one does.
In some ways, I feel like I am a refugee, forced from my homeland by religious persecution. It's sort of like, I think I've heard definitely Karen and maybe Hannah, and I'm not sure, maybe some of the other Badgers too, talk about how, because the female gender role in society is more open, they were allowed to explore some more masculine or gender atypical behaviors. And I don't feel like they needed to be transgender to do so. But the gender role for males is so stifling. If you don't want to be a fucking stoic, disposable slave, or boy, like Allison says, you have no choice but to identify as trans. Boy actually means servant, but I guess slave is close enough.
And I know you probably didn't mean this quite literally, but I wouldn't say you have no choice. Stoic disposable slave is the simple but grinding option. The alternative is logistically difficult and grinding. You can be a man who's sensitive and outspoken and whatever the opposite of disposable is, I guess valuable. But it's very tricky to negotiate that obstacle course as a gender-typical man. Being some kind of artist is your best option. But even that has a similarly risky success rate to all the other man stuff. So, yeah, point taken.
I feel almost like one of those janissaries Allison is always referring to, or anyone born in a country that is dominated or ruled by one religion or ethnicity, and they have to flee for their lives because they aren't in that group. So I feel like a refugee from maleness. The crazy religion of feminism is making it so onerous, so unpleasant, so miserable for anyone to identify as male, that people are just simply refusing to identify as male anymore. Maybe I'm a canary in the coal mine, but I wouldn't be surprised if the number of gender refugees like me increases steadily as feminism becomes more and more violent in its persecution of males, while claiming to fight against harmful gender norms, while simultaneously trying to push people who once identified as male into ever more impossibly small boxes of impossible expectations.
It's worth pointing out that there are plenty of women, genetically female people, who also identify as gender fluid, or what have you. Obviously, there are more trans women than trans men, but still, plenty of women don't want to be women either. People don't like being called an oppressor class or an oppressed class. The narrative of man bad, woman weak is at least indiscriminate in one detail. It makes everyone feel shitty about themselves.
But I was watching a recent video, Rantzerker 21, How to Raise a Slave, and it really made me think. I was going to leave a bunch of comments on the video, but it got to be too many, so I figured it'd be just easier to write into the show.
Thank you very much for thinking before posting. That doesn't sound like much, but seriously, it is very much appreciated.
And maybe some of these hypotheses could be good seeds for future discussion.
Good call. Have a mailbag episode. Just for you.
My overall thoughts on the video were, like, in the times that I would identify as male, my reaction to all this that the HuffPost drugged up psychos were trotting out was just sort of incredulity. All of this is going to have the opposite effect of their desired outcome on some males. Like, none of this makes me feel guilty or like I want to serve women, or be their slave, or be a fucking gentleman. It just makes me enraged. And I feel like I want these kinds of women to go fuck off. Get the hell out of my life. Just go. Stop breathing. And like I want to rebel against them in every possible way. I'm not going to be a slave. I'm not going to fucking just obey women and be disposable. I'm not going to internalize this fucking misandry and androphobia. I'm not going to fucking put myself and my life first. How about they go be fucking disposable and do for me? How about she for he? I'm with Allison on this one. How about we have the females be the heroes and let the males be the damsels in distress who get rescued?
To a lot of people, that sounds like an unthinkable idea. They hear an idea like men as damsels, and they picture a world of men who have become oversensitive and prissy and self-righteous and bossy, and oh wait, I'm describing feminist men. It's funny how that works, isn't it? But it's unsurprising when you think about it, because, like I said, this narrative makes everyone feel shitty about themselves.
Sorry if this ended up being really long again. Maybe you could break it down into chunks. I'm just really passionate sometimes about the things you guys discuss on the show. I think it's just such important work. Okay, cheers from Jay. Keep badgering on. Alright. Before I begin, I just want to say that these are my views. This is not the views of anybody else at Honey Badger Radio. This is my opinion. Now, Jay has suggested that there may be a significant number, maybe not significant number of men who are fleeing the identity of man because of the onerous expectations put on it. And what they're doing is they're fleeing man for woman.
I do like your refugee metaphor. It's good that you're thinking in abstractions. That does help in dealing with it sometimes. Although the metaphor's a little clunky in places. For one thing, evacuating a country is just difficult. Evacuating a genetic identity is impossible. with today's standards of biochemistry anyway. And for another thing, you're migrating from man country to woman country because man country is being invaded. Who's invading it? Woman country. The country in which you are seeking refuge is the country that is threatening you. Not usually the best idea. It's like a Tibetan monk going, "Oh, I can't handle this anymore, I'm going to China." I know it's just a loose metaphor, but I'm a pedantic dick sometimes. Plus, my pedantry on this occasion leads us towards Alison's alternate suggestion. And even if we stay in the metaphor, Alison's suggestion does seem to make more sense.
Now, this is Jay's theory, not mine. So, be that as it may, I am going to discuss it in the context of her theory. I think that is entirely possible. But what I would say to those individuals, those adult human males who find the increasingly unpleasant expectations of attached to the word man to be untenable, is that they might not want to consider fleeing man for woman. Instead, really challenging the traditional gender situation and actually demanding a real gender binary. Because what we have right now isn't even a gender binary. What we have right now is basically one gender. And what I mean by that is there's only one group of people who is allowed to take a positive identity from their the biological experience of going through puberty. That becomes a positive identity. That is a value. You just have an identity by virtue of going through puberty, by virtue of attaining physical adulthood. There is only one group of people, and that is cis women. These are the only group of people who have a gender identity, an identity predicated on their achieving puberty. That's it. That's all a cis woman needs to do to be a woman, to be granted her gender identity. The word man is not a gender identity. It doesn't refer to adult human male. It refers to a set of expectations, most often placed on adult human males, that if they do not achieve them, they are not a man. So that's not a gender identity. That's a set of expectations. It has absolutely not, a gender identity for adult human males would simply have them attain it. That's the nature of a gender identity. They would attain it simply through going through puberty, simply for having attained adulthood, gone through puberty. And then they would have been granted this word to describe themselves by virtue of having gone through puberty, just like women are. Women are granted the word woman by virtue of going through puberty. Men are not granted the word man by virtue of going through puberty. They have to attain additional set of expectations to the satisfaction of people other than themselves, usually. Otherwise, the real man and be a man rhetoric wouldn't make any goddamn sense. Nobody says be a real woman, be a real man, be a woman. Like nobody. And when somebody says you're not a woman, they don't mean that a woman has failed to achieve a set of expectations, has failed to be stoic and self-sacrificing and protective of the people who need to be protected. They don't mean that. They mean that literally she has a penis. Now, when they say that be a man to, or you're not a man to an adult human male, they mean you haven't attained the set of expectations I have for you. So I am withdrawing your identity. And it's not a gender identity, it's just an identity. It's just a name that we give for this set of expectations we've put on you. And even if you look at the history of the word man, man isn't a gender identity. It is a gender-neutral way of referring to an adult human. Gender-neutral. So a woman could be a man. And so what was adult human male? Well, that we had a word for it. Weremen. We had Weremen and Weremen. Weremen became woman, and everybody figured that men no longer needed their own gender identity, so they took it away and left just man, which is gender neutral adult. So instead of going from man to woman, why not demand that we reclaim the word Weremen?
See, if you're evacuating towards the country that's attacking you, you might as well be surrendering. You might as well stand right under the bombs. Fuck that. Take your country back. How about that? Yeah, I know it's been turned into a dry wasteland of a country with no name and no shared identity, but it's your home. It's where you were born. It's where you grew up. And to sort of bring the metaphor back to its clunkiness, there are only two countries here. No matter how many lines you draw in the sand, that is just the political map. No matter how many people migrate from one to the other or become dual citizens like yourself, Jay, the physical map of this terrain shows only two countries. And a handful of very small island nations occupied by people with extremely rare genetic conditions. So you could abandon man country, you could declare it doesn't exist and watch it get shored up by the warlords of woman country, or you could save it. You could grab a shovel and start digging man country out of the rubble. And don't despair. Aid, it's on its way.
We are not going to have a gender hegemony here, and the only people who have the privilege of being granted a gender identity by virtue of going through puberty is women. Let's end the gender hegemony. Let's include a term for an adult human male, that weremen get by virtue of going through puberty, just like women. But just by virtue of attaining adulthood, you get your gender identity. And that's it. There's no set of expectations that are often seem to be about what someone else wants you to do, just by virtue of going through puberty, just like women. And then we would have a gender binary if we had women and weremen. Right now we don't. And I'm not saying let's get rid of women's privilege of attaining and having a gender identity given to them by virtue of going through puberty. Let's not take away that privilege, but let's grant it to adult human males. Let's give them back their term, weremen.
Yeah, it's not even a case of giving men a privilege out of thin air, wondering how do we as a society develop a sensibility that's completely alien to us. It's not alien. It's more like it's pushed underground. Because people keep making a concerted effort to push it underground. Like Alison said, give men back their identity. Let's not do this ridiculous bullshit where we confiscate manhood. We hold it hostage from men until they've performed a sufficient amount of community service. Like, don't write a man off as a pussy when he cries. Don't write him off as a deadbeat if he can't find work. Don't write him off as a cuckold if he... Well, if you don't like him, basically. That appears to be how that works. How about just call him a dick or something, yeah? Rather than your woman has gone off you so you're less of a man. That's what cuckold means. And that's, that's not the criteria I would draw. Especially as someone who's supposed to be opposing the feminist narrative. And here's one. Don't write a man off as all of the above just because he asked for equal human rights. Because that is actually how oppression works, if you could call it that. That's what the feminists will never understand, and it's what most of you still don't understand. Well, I'm not the one who dehumanized this man. I just called him a pussy and a deadbeat and a cuck on the grounds that I find him too weak to be a man. This is why we haven't got anywhere for centuries, because even the people who think they're opposing the narrative are still just layering on their own version of it. No matter how much you mock women, you still understand that you can never take their identity away. But you still get to take men's identity away at the drop of a hat, even if you're supposed to be defending them. Sort it out, people. Seriously.
So, like I said, don't really challenge the situation. Challenge this traditional notion of gender. Don't go from man to woman. Go from man to weremen.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be weremen. Yeah, that's just the latest example we can find in the history of English parlance. Since then, the standard English accent has developed this estuary silent R. So wereman sounds a lot like woman in an English accent anyway. So maybe that's what happened, eh? Maybe they stole wereman and did away with whiffman. So maybe take whiffman back. I'm Mike and I'm a whiffman. The old switcheroo. Whatever. And it doesn't even need to be a different word. If you're comfortable saying man, you just keep saying man. Just try and recognise that man is not a conditional identity for a post-pubescent male. Any more than black is a conditional identity for black people. I mean, everyone loves that famous Chris Rock routine, right? You know what I'm talking about. But it's the same shit, isn't it? According to that narrative, there are black people and there are niggers. And if you don't conform to what we consider to be the appropriate level of citizenship, then you're not a real black person, you're just a nigger. Same shit as this. There are real men, and there are the universal scum we call not real men. I mean, if you want to call yourself a nigger, that's fine. Call yourself whatever you like. But if you're black and someone tells you you're not really a black person because of your behaviour, you may tell them in no uncertain terms to fuck off, including Chris Rock. Say it. Be not ashamed, but be not proud either. Just be. Just say, I can't find a job. I don't get to see my kids. Women cheat on me all the time and I cry sometimes. But that does not make me a pussy, or a deadbeat, or a cuckold, or a nigger. I am a man! Is that clear? Will that ever be clear?
And to support the notion that maybe weremen should, maybe adult human males should be granted a gender identity by virtue of going through puberty, I'm going to list some of the biological values, like the biological benefits, not to men, but to society, everyone. Not just to weremen, but to everyone.
Oh, that's quite alien too, isn't it? I mean, pushed underground. The idea that men benefit society just by being men. I mean, women have it. Women are considered beneficial to society just by having the ability to bear and raise children, and they are considered automatically compassionate enough to do that, just by virtue of going through puberty. Because to some degree they are that compassionate, in the majority. This is an evolved compassion, which will always be there, unless it's actively stripped from an individual through abuse or rare mental illness. It's well understood. Humans would not be such a successful species if women hadn't evolved to nurture their children more than any other organism does. And guess what? The same goes for men. If men were the tyrants and woman clubbers we've been taught to believe they are, then our species would not be this successful. Men and women both have extraordinary brains and extraordinary constitutions. They're slightly different, but they're both extraordinary. Women have an extraordinary ability to raise children, and men have an extraordinary ability to raise children. But neither can be stripped of that identity by not having children. Because, we still tend to extend that compassion to our fellow adults, to a degree unlike any other species. At least we are designed to, by nature. And we do, if you put us in nature. If you put us in a society like this, under the thumb of an all-seeing big brother and the strictest gender roles in all history, that shit will get very skewed. And we, at Honey Badger Radio, are trying to unskew it. We're proposing how it might become unskewed. And again, I'm very sorry if you feel Adam Ruins Everything has already sufficiently unskewed it, but I, for one, disagree.
And I know guys who are listening here are going to think, well, no, these factors are things that I attain by listening to other people tell me what their expectations are and fulfilling them. No, that's not. These individuals, society and women may channel, may utilize, may exploit, in many cases, the innate qualities that you are granted by virtue of going through puberty, but they did not give you these values. You had them, and you've always had them, ever since we evolved.
Yeah, which is to take nothing away from your intelligence, from your ability to learn. I know, as men, we tend to think we don't deserve anything unless we've earned it through our actions. That's why it's so easy to exploit us into believing all our privileges are unearned. But think of it like this. You earned this quality by surviving, as a species, as a gender, by successfully navigating all the terrains the Earth has to offer, and by successfully raising families, generation after generation. I mean, you're a fleshy, defenseless ape, but you still managed to survive and reproduce, because there are millions of years of fine-tuning in your brain, the part of your brain that cares.
These are the unique biological factors that we should reclaim the word Weremen to recognize. All right, this is the first one. Compassion, up to and including self-sacrifice.
Important note, that doesn't mean you need to sacrifice yourself to be a real man. It means you are already innately more self-sacrificing than a woman. Which makes perfect sense in light of evolution. Women sacrifice their bodies by taking the risk of childbirth. Men sacrifice their bodies by taking pretty much all the other risks. Men's compulsion to master the tribulations of an unforgiving wilderness is as biologically innate as women's compulsion to create homes. Again, neither of these specialities is any more important than the other. That's the point. Everyone is important. Not everyone is equally skilled, but everyone is important.
Notice how many men will dive off a bridge into icy water to save another human being. This isn't just something that was trained into them via chivalry or social attitudes about being a man. This is something innate. And it's innate not just to human males, but to many males of social species. For example, stallions will insert themselves between their herd and any kind of dangerous animal that threatens that herd. They will sacrifice themselves to protect their herd. And this is a feature of many males in social species. And ours is absolutely the same. Weremen will go out of their way to help another human being, even if they aren't related. See how many men get involved in dangerous rescue operations. This is a very, very common feature of human men, of weremen. See, even I'm doing it. This is a very common feature of weremen, of the adult human male. You are far, far, far more likely to be rescued by a wereman than you are to be in any way harmed by one. Reality check, people. Reality check. All right, the other thing, and also, if you look at studies of empathy, weremen experience as much empathy as women, if not more. If you look at the autonomous, you look at these automatic reactions, these reflexive reactions we have towards people who look like they're suffering. If you look at just the reflexes, you will see that weremen have as much of a response, if not more, and as much of an empathetic response, if not more, as women. And that compassion and that unique desire and ability to self-sacrifice, that is one of the reasons, just one of the reasons, why we should recognize a unique biological identity for adult human males. We should recognize that they have achieved that unique biological identity.
Recognize it, but not exploit it. which is 2 entire steps away from where we are now. At the moment, we're exploiting men's innate self-sacrificial nature, and we're not even recognizing it. We're going, you need to sacrifice yourself because you're innately selfish. You have a patriarchal privilege that we've invented and envisaged from nothing. Therefore, you have to give up your actual privileges of freedom and relative safety. That whole shtick is straight out of Upside Down land. It only supercharges men's self-sacrificial nature to a completely counterproductive degree. It's like telling women you need to have children because women never have children. It's obvious bullshit. And it can only result in strained populations of terminally unhappy people. That's what happens in Upside Down land, and it is apocalyptic to say the very least.
Okay, the second one is cooperation. Human males are the most, adult human males, particularly adult human males, are the most cooperative creatures on the planet. Think about everything that Weremen have created in cooperation. There's nothing you don't touch that hasn't been created by the cooperation of Weremen. And that is an evolved feature. That's something that human males achieve at adulthood. That is something that grows, that develops in puberty. That ability to cooperate is something that develops in them in puberty. And the reason why I say that is that there is some preliminary evidence to suggest that human males have evolved pheromonal signaling to each other to induce cooperation. So this is an evolved trait. This is something that's right into your DNA, and it manifests at puberty. And part of it is, when I say it manifests at puberty, they've shown that, there's some preliminary research that shows that Weremen respond to the pheromones of other Weremen. But here's the caveat: only if they have higher testosterone. So testosterone mediates the cooperation. The more testosterone, the more cooperative, and the more they respond to this pheromone to induce cooperation. So it's right into your DNA. And testosterone increases during puberty. So this is activated during puberty, theoretically. I mean, it's not completely proven right now. There's just preliminary evidence to suggest that. So that's another thing. Cooperation is why we should recognize an innate human adult male identity.
When men share an identity as builders, they achieve extraordinary things. When they share an identity as musicians, they achieve extraordinary things. When they share an identity as gamers, well, you get the idea. Can you imagine what men could achieve if they shared an identity as men?
Risk-taking. This is another thing that testosterone does for adult human males. Risk-taking behavior. Increases risk-taking, increases innovation, increases status-seeking, which increases development of all kinds of things, societies, construction, you name it. These qualities compel the development of them. Testosterone also makes Weremen more fair-minded, generous, and unlike most people's beliefs, it does not actually make Weremen more violent. In fact, preliminary evidence suggests that estrogen is more linked to violence than testosterone, which is why roid rage is a thing, because there's so much testosterone being circulated into those guys' systems that their brain is turning it into estrogen. So essentially they're just PMSing all the time. So there you go. That's another thing that we should celebrate and we should value and we should recognize by giving Weremen their own innate identity by virtue of having gone through puberty.
This is a lot like the self-sacrificing thing. Recognize that men take risks more than women do, but do not exploit it. Telling men they need to fight each other is abusing their strength. Yeah, it's unnecessary to tell a man he needs to build a house. He will do it anyway. And telling a man he needs to fight off all the other men because they're evil is grossly irresponsible. Not least because it's quite likely that he'll do it. If that's what he thinks will best serve his loved ones, he'll do it. He'll go off and kill the bad men, rather than spending his energy on something worthwhile like building a house. This, of course, requires an understanding of the notion that men are not evil. Not in any part of the world. Needless to say, none of this is going to work until you can figure that out.
And the final thing is sort of my particular favorite. Now let's talk about the tackle, as it were. Human male sexual organs are fairly unique in the animal kingdom because they use a vasocongestive. They are vasocongestive, so the erection occurs via blood congestion of erectile tissues rather than a muscular contraction. Many other animals, not all other animals, have a penis bone which facilitates a muscular contraction, which is the erection. What vasocongestion does is it increases the girth and also the flexibility of the human male penis. What does that mean? That means more pleasure for your female partner, or your male partner, really, and more positions. So greater intimacy. So adult human males have evolved to increase the pleasure of the sexual pleasure of their partners and also to increase the intimacy of the act.
This is hard, isn't it? You're feeling good about yourself without having to do anything. And again, this is not to say you need to have an exceptionally girthy, flexible penis to be a real man. No matter how small your dick is, rest assured if you were any other primate, it would be considerably smaller. You have the best dick of all the apes. Easily. And you should feel good about it. That's what we're talking about. You should have that feeling. This is the feeling women get when they hear about how great pussy is and how beautiful boobs are. Or at least the feeling they would get were they not brainwashed into thinking of unconditional sexual admiration as a bad thing. When it happens to women, it's called objectification. When it happens to men, well, it generally doesn't happen to men. Like I said, this gender narrative makes everyone feel shitty, but in completely different ways for men and women.
And the other thing that's interesting about a vasocongestive erection is that it's keyed to much more psychological factors than a simple muscle contraction. For most animals, the sexual act is pretty much instigated by olfactory and visual cues. But with a vasocongestive erection and a lot of the psychology of a human male, you introduce a subjective quality to sexual expression in humans. And what you introduce is this idea of being desirable and being desired. So at puberty, human males are compelled to develop a more powerful theory of mind because of this idea of being desirable. Or they do develop, or not compelled, they do develop a more powerful theory of mind. And you can see that with child development. Human males develop a more powerful theory of mind because there becomes to be an aspect of their sexual, what they respond to sexually. It's not just visual, it's not just olfactory, it's the perception of being desired. The subjective experience of your sexual partner compels a lot of human males' sexual their sexual quality, their sexual nature. That's profound. We have replaced a dominance, a visual dominance, and olfactory, particularly an olfactory dominance, because most animals give off a scent when they're ready to mate, and we don't really very consciously do that. We have replaced that with something that's even more primary to us. And the reason why I say it's more primary, particularly to men, you can show a man a picture of an attractive woman, but he does not get a dopamine, like a surge of pleasure, unless she's looking at him, unless she's expressing a form of desire for him. So human men are sexually keyed. to the subjective states of their potential sexual partners.
It's weird to think of a penis as though it's not a weapon, isn't it? In fiction, the penis is often seen as a weapon, and in whatever fantasy worlds we personally concoct, but over here in reality, the penis is the least weapony part of the exterior body. I mean, your knee, your head, your elbow, even your ass can all be used as weapons way more efficiently than the penis. I mean, you can beat someone with a salami, but not if that salami is attached to your pelvis. You can't fucking swing it properly. If you're not using your arms or your legs, and you're just attacking someone with your penis, nothing but your penis, then all you're doing is exposing your most sensitive parts to your opponent. That's the exact fucking opposite of a weapon. So yeah, pay no mind to those who would tell you penises are dirty and dangerous and that only a shameless whore would ever touch one. Your penis is not a weapon. It is a window into your soul, every bit as much as your eyes are. And you are not led by it. It is led by you. You and your exceptionally compassionate and cooperative human brain. Let people tell you otherwise if they will, but you need not heed a word of it, sir.
That's profound. And that is unique. And that happens to human males at puberty. Now just think about how incredible that is. And how little people praise it. In fact, I don't even think anybody considers that. How remarkable that is. How remarkable an achievement for that to have evolved. And we mock it by saying things like objectification. We degrade it. And the only reason why objectification works is because 95% of men never would do that. And actually couldn't really have a sexual response in that context. Because a huge portion of their sexuality is keyed to the subjective brain states of their partner. Isn't that remarkable? And so that's another reason why I think we should celebrate and we should recognize that just by virtue of having gone through puberty, an adult human male has a value and should be granted a gender identity that can't be taken away from him through other people's expectations. So again, if you're an individual like Jay has described, a human male who's like, I'm fleeing manhood, I'm fleeing being a man. Don't flee it for being a woman, necessarily, if this is why you're doing it, and let's separate that from being transgender. Don't flee it for that, or being gender fluid, or neutral. Flee it for saying, yeah, let's have a gender binary. Let's have a corresponding gender category for men, for adult human males who've simply gone through puberty and have attained the value of having done that, have attained the biological value of adult human maleness. Weremen. Become weremen.
Yeah, or any word you like. Again, as any identity you like, as long as you keep it and as long as it's yours. And if they try to confiscate it, laugh. Laugh at them, long and heartily, until they understand that they cannot confiscate it without your express permission. Don't give them that permission. They might take your countries, they might take your bodies, they might take your lives, they might even take your freedom, but they cannot take your identity unless you relinquish it of your own free will. Do not. It is yours.
They can't take your compassion, your kindness, your sense of fair play. They can't take your cooperation. They can't take these things. No set of expectations, no set of expectations can take these things away from you. You are the most innovative, the most cooperative, the most compassionate, and the most just fair creature on the planet. And no one can take that away from you. Weremen.